Well, hello, everyone. Happy Friday afternoon to you. I hope you have had a really good week so far. My name is Erica Petrelli-Bai with the Leadership Program, and this is the last of what has been a series of sneak peeks, mini snippets of workshops that we are offering as part of our next cohort of the Leadership Learning Lab. This series of workshops, which starts next week, so you still have time to register. We are so excited to offer you this series of workshops starting next week, every Wednesday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Leadership Learning Lab is a series of workshops designed for emerging leaders looking to elevate and bolster their leadership skills. You can see the schedule right here. There's a series of amazing topics. If you've been to our sneak peeks this week, you've gotten a little bit of tidbits from a few of these sessions. There's information on how to register at the bottom of your screen. We'll show this slide again at the end of our 15 minutes together. There is still space and time to register for this cohort that again starts next Wednesday and then goes basically every Wednesday through the end of June. 8 workshops that are absolutely going to elevate your leadership game or the leadership game of someone that reports to you or is on your team. So check it out. We really hope to see you at this series. Today, I'm going to give you a few minutes of one of our favorite workshops on navigating difficult conversations. It happens to be the last one that we're going to be offering in this Leadership Learning Lab series. And it is one that always ignites really dynamic conversations because, as the quote on the screen says, sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult to engage in. Jean Phillips is someone to listen to because you may actually know her as Dear Abby. So Dear Abby columnist reminds us that sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult to engage in. So why difficult conversations? Let's dig in. We'll give you a little bit of the tips that you would normally get in what is a hour-and-a-half long workshops. The idea of difficult conversations is a trade-off, right? When we engage, when we have the courage to engage in a difficult conversation, what we're doing is trading the short-term discomfort that often comes for many of us in a difficult conversation with long-term positive results. Strengthening relationships, whether it's relationships on your team or frankly, any relationship in your life. If you are willing to step into these difficult conversations, the result when you do them well is long-term strengthened relationships. But a lot of us don't really know how to begin a difficult conversation, how to participate in a difficult conversation. So let's start with the basics of what we're even talking about when we're talking about these challenging conversations. So our definition of the difficult or challenging conversation is that it's a discussion. It's not just with yourself, between 2 or more people, where usually at least some of these things are present. The stakes are high. The topic at hand is important to at least one of you in the conversation. Opinions are varied. There's oftentimes a difference of opinion and different perspectives. Sometimes we feel like we don't have control over the outcome, so the stakes are even higher in our mind because we feel it's outside of our control. And oftentimes emotions are really high as well. Strong feelings, oftentimes strong negative feelings, whether it's anger, fear, or sadness. A lot of these things are present when a difficult conversation is necessary, which makes them all the more intimidating to dive into. So here are a few tips next time you are either participating in or receiving or leading a difficult conversation. So let's start with if you are leading a difficult conversation. So think about on your team at work when you're having to walk into a difficult conversation. A few things that we recommend when you're about to begin or lead a difficult conversation. First is to prepare in advance. How often do our difficult conversations go awry because we forget to think about them before we have them? So number 1 tip is to prepare in advance what you are wanting to talk about, and more importantly, what is the outcome you hope to achieve. Second tip is to take a breath. How often do we walk into a difficult conversation already with the feeling strong? And the first thing that goes out the window when our emotions are strong is our breathing. So take a breath before you begin. Third, and equally important to anything else, is ask for the conversation. Ask for a moment. I call this the pounce. When we talk about this in a lot of different areas, nothing is worse when you get pounced on, or you pounce on a person and say, we need to talk about what just happened in the meeting. That conversation is set up to fail if you don't ask for permission for the conversation to occur. So do you have a moment to talk? If the answer is no, then don't continue with the conversation. If the answer is no, I don't have a minute right now, say, okay, can we talk in my office later today? Can we talk at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? So if the answer is no, I don't have a moment now, go ahead and just schedule the time to have the conversation. But asking for permission to have the conversation already opens up the space for the conversation to occur, and defenses can be down a little bit. Have a good starter sentence and then follow a model. In the full workshop, today I'll give you a couple starter sentences. In the full workshop, we really get into ways to begin, and we offer a really complex model that you can follow step by step on how to engage from start to finish in a difficult conversation. Use those tools to your advantage, and then always thank them for their time, even if the conversation hasn't gone the way you intended or is yet resolved. It's not resolved yet, or it's gone off the rails a little bit, but you have to stop the conversation. To thank them for simply giving the time for the conversation is such a show of respect. And when we are engaging in difficult conversations, to really maintain a level of respect for the other person, even if you're engaged in the mightiest of disagreements and differences of opinions, really go a long way in a positive ultimate outcome. So these are a few ideas on the leading end of difficult conversations, but we don't always just lead the difficult conversation. Oftentimes, we're going to stay on this screen for just a minute. Oftentimes, we are the receiver, whether we want to be or not. And so when we're receiving information that might be difficult to hear, here's a few ways to help that go as smoothly as possible. So your supervisor has just asked you for a moment to talk about what just happened in the meeting just now. If you say, yes, you have a moment, stop everything else that you're doing. One of the worst ways to engage in a difficult conversation is to continue on. Let's say you're typing on your computer, you're putting away some supplies, whatever task you are busy with. If you're going to engage in a difficult conversation, especially if you're on the receiving end of that feedback, it's important to stop and give that person your full energy and attention. They needed to take a breath before they started talking to you. You also need to take a breath once you realize a difficult conversation is upon you. That breathing is really going to help calm your body and just open up your chest, open up your brain, open up your heart, and really shift your mindset to being more open in general to the conversation. Listen, this sounds like an obvious one, but oftentimes when we are faced with feedback that is difficult to hear or that raises our defenses, we stop listening, even without realizing that we've stopped listening. So really genuinely put on your active listening ears and listen to what the person is trying to say to you, no matter how difficult it is. And then once they've finished, you can ask clarifying questions. I'm not sure I understand where you're coming from. Can you help me understand? Can you explain more about what you saw that was troubling? Can you give me more specific examples of the behavior that was problematic for you? Asking clarifying questions, what did you mean when you said, really helps you continue to breathe through those difficult emotions that might be arising, and also gives the person who's leading the feedback, in this case, the opportunity to get clearer and clearer about what message they're trying to send and what result they're hoping for in the moment. Apologize or let them know you heard and you understand. So that's a one or the other. Choose your own adventure. If you own the feedback that you've just received, if you understand what they've said and you acknowledge that you did make a mistake or you were in error, to apologize. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry that I dropped the ball there, is a really fantastic way to own the moment and then move quickly forward from the conversation. If you don't feel an apology is necessary, if you don't yet agree with the feedback, you can still thank them for their feedback and say that you understood what they had to say. and maybe say, I need to think about this some more. We can talk about this another time. If you are in agreement about the conversation to ensure and assure that future behavior will be different is a helpful way to move forward. And always, the thank you for them for investing in you is your show of respect. When you're leading the conversation, thanking them for listening to you is your show of respect. When you're receiving the difficult information, thanking them for investing in you is your show of respect. So that mutual respect goes a long way when engaging in difficult conversations. So that's the leading and receiving. When we have this workshop in full length, we then spend the entire rest of the time on the leading side of things, because that is where a lot of us just stumble before we even start. So for today, we'll give you a couple snippets of starter sentences, and that's what's going to come next. So we hear all the time, okay, I hear you. Difficult conversation is a good thing to do. It's going to move our relationships forward. It's going to strengthen the team in the long run. But I cannot even figure out how to begin a difficult conversation. I always stumble. I avoid it. I say the wrong thing. I'm done before I start. So here's 5 magical phrases for starting a difficult conversation. This is a great screen to just snap a picture of and keep in your pocket if you get stuck. Eventually, they'll become second nature to you. I want to clarify something you said the other day because I'm not sure I understood you correctly. Do you have a minute to talk? I'd love to talk to you about something that has been bothering me. I'm feeling frustrated and I'd really like the opportunity to clear the air. I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot and I'd like to start again. Please let me know when you have a few minutes to talk about something that might be hard to hear. These can be hard to say, but boy, do they open up the path for whatever it is that's on your mind. And the reason this is so important, as I'm sure you know and have experienced time and time again, the longer we wait to have the difficult conversation, the longer we wait to address the behavior that was below expectations, the comment that was outside of what is expected at work, whatever was frustrating to us, the longer we wait to address it, the harder it is to address it. And usually the more other things we collect along the way that are bugging us, bothering us, frustrating us because we didn't address the first thing. And so then we just collect more things. If you can get comfortable with these phrases or others and really address the issues as they arise, those difficult conversations become less difficult and easier in the long run to navigate. And it becomes part of the norm at your workplace that difficult moments are handled as often as moments that we're celebrating. So think about those 5 magical phrases, which one might really work for you, and remember it. Use it as a script to start and then find one that's your own. So I mentioned earlier that when we do the full length workshop, we have what we call a complex tool for navigating difficult conversations. It's not complex in its implementation. It's complex in that it allows you the opportunity to think what you're going to do before the conversation, during the conversation, and after the conversation. So we call this our difficult conversation wheel. And I've put a few questions that are on the wheel. I've pulled them out so that you can see what they are. For the purposes of our little sneak peek right now, the whole wheel is hard to see. But what this tool will do is allow you a resource to prepare deeply and thoroughly for any conversation that you are going to engage in that you believe is going to be difficult. It allows you to pre-think when, where, how you should have this conversation. What are the facts you need to gather in order to have the conversation? What assumptions you might be going in with? What prejudgments you're making? What part you might have played in the situation? The difficult conversation wheel is a dynamic tool that really allows you to make sure you've thought through all of the aspects of the situation before the conversation starts, and also allows you to think through to the end what your expected outcomes are. So if you take this workshop, we really dive into how to handle a conversation from start to beyond finish. Okay, so for today, that is it. That's the sneak peek. But if you engage in registering in the next cohort of the Leadership Learning Lab, you will get the full-length workshop of that plus 7 other workshops Registration information is right here. We really hope we see you or a member of your team. If you can't make this cohort, certainly keep your eyes out for the next one that we're offering. We hope to see you soon and have a beautiful weekend, everybody.